All right, so today y'all are going to learn how to add and subtract rational expressions. Yesterday you learned how to multiply and divide. So when you multiply and divide fractions, it's totally different. When you multiply fractions, how do you multiply them? Top to top, bottom to bottom, straight across. That's right. Very good. When you add and subtract, so when we multiplied rationals, there were two steps you had to do. You had to factor, right? And then you canceled out your matching tops and bottoms. Add and subtract is different. So when you add and subtract fractions, let's look at 2/3 plus 1/4. How do you add those? You have to find the kind of, but we call it a common denominator. You need a common denominator. So it's totally different than multiply, divide. You need a common denominator. So if I look at 2/3 over 2/3 plus 1/4, what could my common denominator be? 12. Very good. So I want to turn this into a 12. So what am I going to do to the 2/3? You're going to multiply the top and the bottom by 4. Listen, it's new, and you need to pay attention. Put your phones, your head, earbuds, any of that. Give me 10 minutes, and it'll be easy, okay? How do I make the denominator of 1/4 12? What do? Multiply by 3. Now, you always have to multiply the top and the bottom, because what we're doing is we're making an equivalent fraction. You can't just multiply the bottom. But you're really not changing 2/3 if you multiply the top and the bottom by 4. So this one will become 2/3 is the same thing as 8 over 12. And then plus, so I'm multiplying my 3 over 12. And so now that I have a common denominator, how do I add them? I've got 8 twelfths and 3 more twelfths. You add the top 2, so now I have 11 twelfths. So my second step is add the top. I'm going to keep the common denominator. So you're adding the top or the numerator, but I didn't have enough room to write that. But you're keeping the common denominator. So on number 1, we had to multiply both fractions to make a common denominator of 12. If you look at number 2, you've got 3 over 32 minus 1 over 8. Do I have to multiply them both? No. Which one could I multiply? The 1 over 8. What am I going to multiply it by to make it match? 4. Good. Okay, so here I never subtract. Remember how we said we never divide? I never subtract. So when I see subtraction, I go plus, minus. I'm just distributing the negative sign. Okay, and that will help you when your rationals get kind of big. So here, you don't have to, but it's easier if you just make it addition and distribute the negative sign. So now I'm going to have 3 over 32 plus negative 4 over 32. And so like y'all said, we add the numerators. 3 minus 4 gives you negative 1, and you keep the common denominator. Okay? So you guys are pretty good with that, right? Feel comfortable with that. Now all you have to do is we're just going to apply it to rationals, because it's really the same thing. First, you look at the denominators. Okay, it's addition, so I don't have to change it to addition. It's addition. These are my two denominators. Think of what we did to make these both 12. So I need to multiply the first one and the second one, thank you very much, by something to make a common denominator. So the first one only has x on the bottom, but it needs x plus 2. Okay? The second one only has x plus 2 on the bottom, so I have to multiply it by x. Now they have the same common denominator. Okay, so their common denominator is x times x plus 2. And you guys said when you add fractions, you keep your common denominator, and then you add what's on top, the numerator. But before we can do that, we're going to distribute the 5, and here we're going to distribute the x. So we're going to have 5x plus 10 plus x squared minus 3x. That's everything that's on top. So I just multiplied. And then my last step is I just have to simplify the numerator. So I'm not going to change the common denominator, but I want to see, is there anything on top that I can add together? First, I write them in degree order. So I've got my x squared, and then I've got negative 3x and positive 5x. So I'm going to add those together. That gives me 2x, and then plus 10. I'm going to tell you that doesn't factor, the top doesn't factor to anything that's going to cancel. It doesn't even factor. Okay, so that would be my answer. It's possible that you could factor the top and then cross something off, but you're not going to have to do that on any of your problems on your notes today. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time worrying about it because I want to make sure you can just add and subtract. Caitlin, do you have a question about that one? You're okay? Okay, let's do another one. So sometimes the common denominator is pretty clear, like x times x plus 2. But sometimes I can't tell what this is. I would say, because we're in the rational unit, the odds are it has x plus 1 in it when I factor it, because it's usually going to be some sort of kind of match. So what multiplies to make 1 times 5 and adds to make 6? Very good. So I've got x plus 5 times x plus 1. So now I can see my common denominator, right? I need them to match, okay? I need them to match. That's my this is my denominator of the first fraction. So the second one needs to be multiplied by x plus 5. Okay, so now they match. Do I have to multiply this one by anything? No, because look, it has both. It's kind of like the example up top when we had the 32, and it was already 32, so you left it alone, but then you had to multiply that one to make it 32. So sometimes you have to only multiply one. Okay, so the first fraction is not going to change. Okay. The second one, we have to distribute. So plus 6x plus 30. And then we just need to combine our like terms. So we get our 10x plus 30 over x plus 5 times x plus 1. Okay, and that doesn't factor to anything that's going to cancel out. It's good to go. Hey, Trey, do you have a question? Okay. Does anybody have a question over this one? Questions are good. So sometimes you have to multiply both. Matt, put that away. Sometimes you have to multiply one to get your common denominator. Okay, the subtracting. Like I said, I don't subtract. It's just easier. So plus minus. I just distributed the negative sign. Now it's just an addition problem. Okay? So what's my common denominator? We don't want to multiply them with each other. So I don't want to make it, I mean, kind of. I mean, we write them as multiplied by each other, but we don't actually FOIL it so that we would have that negative 21 on the end, if that's what you meant. Is that what you meant? Yeah. Okay. So we don't actually multiply them out to make the trinomial. We just write them as multiplied by each other. So the first fraction, Marcus, what do you need to multiply the first one by? X minus 7. It's missing x minus 7. The second one, Matt, what's it missing? Right now it's just negative 8 over x minus 7. It's missing x plus 3. Very good. So to make that common denominator, I have to multiply by that. So my common denominator is just x plus 3 times x minus 7. But on top, you're distributing. So I have to multiply my x minus 7 times 2x. So you're going to get 2x squared minus 14x plus, I've already dealt with the negative, so I don't have to worry about it. It's on the negative, it's negative 8 now. It's just an addition problem. So negative 8 times x and negative 8 times positive 3. Oops, sorry, it's a negative 24. There we go. So then your last step is just simplify the numerator. So when you simplify the numerator, what are you going to get? Because this is a subtraction problem, so I don't like to subtract. The very first thing I do is distribute that negative sign. And then I only add. And it kind of saves you from, it'll keep you from making errors later, because if it had subtraction in it, then I would still have to distribute it through here, and I wouldn't want to forget to do that. So once I put it on the 8, I'm kind of done with it. I'm done with it. So negative 22x minus 24 all over my common denominator. My other classes were pretty happy with it, and I'm proud of y'all because this year you've been doing an amazing job. Usually the log unit and the Rassel's unit are the harder units for people, and sometimes people get frustrated, but you guys seem like you're doing a really good job this year. All right, so I don't subtract, plus, minus. Now I'm done with it. There's no worrying about distributing it later. I'm done with it. I can't tell what my common denominator is over here, so I've got to factor. When I factor, what are you guys going to get? What goes on top? What multiplies to make 8? 1 times 8, and adds to make? Good. Good. Negative 8, negative 1. X minus 8. I love the way y'all are so supportive of each other. And what's my common denominator? Do I need to multiply this one by anything? No. What do you need to multiply that one by? X minus 8. Good job, guys. What's my common denominator?
X minus 8 and X minus 1.
Francisco, you getting this? Taking notes? All right. So now I know my common denominator. I just have to fix my numerator. What's the top going to look like? Francisco, what's going to be on top? Do I have to multiply this one? It's this problem. So we're just going to write what's left on top. What's on top? Good. 2x plus 5. And then what am I going to get over next? Very good. Negative 3x squared and okay, it's a negative times a negative, so positive 24x. Good. So now I have to simplify it. Taylor, when you simplify it, what's the top going to look like? Mm-hmm. What comes next? Plus 26x. Very good. Okay. Number 7. Okay, when I see subtract, God bless you. Distribute the subtraction. Done. No, it's not at all. Let's look back at this one. So this is the denominator of the first fraction, and I multiplied it. So it's like I'm adding, you know, when we made our something over 12 and something over 12, I needed them to match. Yep. You write your numerator, you simplify over your common denominator. Very good. Can y'all tell what the common denominator is of number 7? What do you have to do? Yeah, Kai said it looks like the difference of squares. What do you think? God bless you. So he's telling you that you need to factor. If it's the difference of squares, what are the factors? Okay. How about this one? I have to factor that, take out the x. Very good. So this guy, okay? So let's see. I want to make sure that it's clear to y'all. Turn that off. I hear it. Turn it off. All right. So what's my common denominator? There's actually 3 things you have to have, right? You have to have a single x, you have to have x minus 5, and you have to have x plus 5 to make them the same. Because you can't take any of them off. So the first one, what's the first one need? It needs an x. Very good. So the only thing we have to multiply by is x, and then it has all 3. What's the second one need? Very good. It needs x minus 5. Okay, so my answer is going to be over x times x plus 5 times x minus 5. All 3 of those things. And then what's my top going to look like? 6x? Good. Very good. So you have to distribute that -2. And then my final answer should look like good. Very good. What do you think? It might seem like a little bit of writing. So just be careful and write, you know, make sure you write enough that it's clear to you what you're doing there, because it does seem like a little bit of writing. Okay, y'all go ahead and work on your